I wanted to kind of start out with the present state of communication and organizing in the Green Party. I would refer to it generously as a hot mess. But for our day-to-day work, we tend to use email lists. Um, that's at both my state and national party. On the local level, honestly, my local tended to communicate largely through Facebook chats, which is a whole other horrible organizing space full of distractions and no organization whatsoever. We also tend to utilize at the state and national level conference calls a lot. Um, I can say from my time on the steering committee, I came to absolutely hate conference calls because there were weeks when I was liaisoning four different committees and they all had calls, and I had a national call and I had a state call and I had six calls in 8 days or something, and um, it was just insane, and we'll get into a little bit more into that later. And then lastly, our locals. A lot of locals may have a Facebook chat or or an email list that's rarely used. But in my experience, a lot of that tends to be like interpersonal and meeting only type stuff. If not on Facebook, there's not a whole lot. If nothing big's happening, a lot of times there's not a cohesive space that people can go and organize in between meetings. And that's kind of true with our conference calls as well. Um, so I don't generally have to. I don't think I have to make much of a pitch to people in the Youth Caucus about moving away from email listservs. But when I did this in the Illinois Green Party, people are very set on how things have been done. And so asking people to leave behind the listserv that's been there since the 1990s when the party was founded is a lot more of a reach outside the caucus. So I don't think that very much time needs to be spent on that in this particular venue, but one of the main reasons I think we should move away from email lists are they're poorly organized. One email can have so many topics. People who don't delete the previous thread can lead to just, as someone who does most of my work on my phone, be it for email, like just endless scrolling to try to get past things. A lot of people across demographics only check email every so often. Or if you're like me with the national committee list, all of that goes to a separate email, and I get no notifications whatsoever when something happens on the national. Straight into a folder, and I check it when I check it, and sometimes it can be months. So it's not encouraging me to work. And as I said, they can be hard to use on mobile devices. Another big reason why I think we need to move away from email is because it's so nonlinear. It's people having conversations kind of in parallel with each other. It's not real time back and forth. And because it's not happening like that, it's drug out. People can, so much can happen in the 8 hours that you're at work that it almost seems overwhelming to get back into it. And they're also very much, emails are very much kind of dehumanizing. Listservs can be toxic places, and people can be incredibly horrible on a listserv and smile and be friendly at a meeting in person. And there's a lot of problems with that and things that need to be dealt with. But at least at the meeting, while everyone's smiling and being friendly, you might be able to get some work done instead of constantly having emails kind of devolve, list threads devolve, and then the whole conversation's dead. Similarly with conference calls, the problem with it kind of bleeds over from email, but because we're so ineffective in how we're doing our work now, because email lists are just doing such a poor job, and maybe in a different culture they could do a better job, but I'm not convinced of that. We end up majorly overpacking things into our monthly or bi-monthly conference. Um, because things are not being voted on online or people aren't paying attention to an online vote and we don't get quorum, now we're spending time on a call agenda. And I don't know, in my experience, when people get the opportunity to speak on something that would have just passed silently online now ends up with a half an hour discussion of a bunch of people supporting it. We're all on the same side. Another problem that I have personally with phone-based conference calls is it's not very stimulating as a medium, and the audio quality is really poor. So a lot of times I can't hear what's going on. The more I can't hear the person who just has a bad connection, the less I'm paying attention, the more likely I am to mute everything and just be sitting there playing my guitar, half listening. I can't do that on a video call. So we may not be able, the video may not actually make us more effective, but it will make me pay a little more. I will be doing a lot less other things in the background. If I can actually look at people and see them and hear what they have to say. So I don't think that the conference call structure is really going anywhere. But I do think moving that to video would be a big plus. I know the Youth Caucus steering committee meets via Blue Jeans via video. And you have better audio quality, it's more humanizing, all of that. But the big thing, for the party, I think, is that we need to be moving away from these email lists and into kind of project management tools and project management strategies and team management strategies. These calls, these semi-regular calls, are not enough time for us to actually efficiently do the work of building this party, to be able to be ready to have the capacity for growth. I can say in 2016 and post 2016, as a member of the steering committee, looking at the party, we were not ready for a potential influx of millions of voters. We just weren't. We weren't ready. Thousands of uncontacted volunteers. If you emailed us, and it's still to this day, if you sign up one of our volunteer sheets, it's kind of going into a black hole until someone in the party decides to say, "Oh, we need graphic designers. Let's see who's ticked that box." Or we need phone bankers. Let's see who's ticked that box. So we're not going to get to where we need to be if only doing serious work in multi-hour calls once or twice a month. And so that's where kind of project and team management tools can help. The Youth Caucus uses Basecamp, and we'll get into that more later, but I am a big fan of Basecamp. Like any tool, though, the problem becomes if people don't engage on it, it doesn't matter how good the tool is. And then one success story I wanted to share before actually getting into some of these tools. But after the presentation that I did at the Illinois Green Party membership conference in September, the Green Party of Chicago, which was kind of dormant, campaign season had kind of kicked in, and the main organizers for the city party apparatus, and there's ward parties too in the city, but for the citywide party apparatus, were campaigning, and things just kind of died down. And it'd been a couple months since they'd had a meeting, and they called a meeting right after the membership conference when I did this presentation. And one of the suggestions I gave was that for our local meetings, we always have a remote participation option, a way for someone to Skype in, a way for someone to call in, that kind of thing. And so the Green Party of Chicago had their meeting, and they do a really good job of moving around the city of Chicago with every meeting. So large, that means that some meetings people can show up and some people can't. So it really fit their organizing style anyway, and they actually doubled their attendance by offering, from the previous couple meetings, by offering a remote way to actually call in. And so that's just another use of, the modern video technology that for a steering committee or a state executive committee, you might use it to have your conference calls and be able to see each other and screen share and do all that and have a chat bar and all that kind of things. But even for a local party, it's something that you can use to grow your base and to get more people involved. So I'm going to take a break really quick and just ask, where are you two in agreement with kind of my assessment of how we're doing things now and how it's working, or am I missing something? But just open it up real quick.
No, your assessment of what's going on listserv wise is very true. I mean, I didn't know that Blue Jeans had all these features. I honestly wish there was a way to teleconference into our locals in general, because there's a teleconference number obviously, but it doesn't go to video call and it's not very well put out. So it's hard to know because the way LA County does it, it's one meeting in person and one meeting on the telephone. But very often you don't get told about the telephone meeting. And I mean, I don't know if I don't get calls because I'm not on the council but so it's definitely a good idea to have something that allows for people to be there even when they can't physically be there. So like, I really enjoyed the heck out of base camp. I'm glad that we use it. Other caucuses really should. But yeah, whatever. But so far I'm following you, and I like to know that Chicago put itself back together after getting a primer on how to communicate better, because that's a necessary thing for all parties, I think. Over.
Yeah. So kind of like the last workshop when I did this, I started that one out by saying what this isn't. And so this workshop is not designed to be a in-depth look at a number of different tools. It's meant to be a massive data dump of tools. At this point, I'm basically calling it I'm preaching the gospel of Michael Dennis. These are the things that when Michael was on the steering committee of both the National Party and the caucus, that they were able to bring in and at least get us kind of touching it, give us the opportunity to use it even if we aren't. And about a year ago, for our fall membership meeting in 2017, I was trying to get Michael to Illinois to do this workshop, and it didn't happen. And so this year, I just did it. I compiled all the things that I've that we tried on the steering committee or through the caucus, and so this is a very quick. This is what this is. This is what it can do. It's not meant to be in depth, but that is certainly something I hope that can develop a little more out of this. So I'm going to go through a few different topic sections. I'll stop after each one and open up for a little brief discussion. If anybody knows anything that should be added, or that is noticeably left out, or has any questions, we can get into that. But I'm going to go through a few. First is video and streaming. Next is kind of chat, email, and text. Next is project management. Then engagement and fundraising. And then administration and communications tools. And then I'm going to close up with what I'm calling democracy tools, which are kind of some different services and things out there that can help us have a more direct democracy within the party or within the caucus. That research kind of came up because of the caucus, but so those are the kind of areas we're going to get into. I have a bit.ly link that I'll put in the chat box, but and I'll put it on the out on the website too. But it contains, this is maybe half of the things on there. I'm not covering graphic design in this one like I did in Illinois. I'm not covering the payment processing options for campaigns, some of that kind of stuff that I had. But so to start off, we're going to talk about video and streaming. As I said, these are often alternatives to conference calls. That's the kind of first step practical use and how the Youth Caucus has been using them. The very easy second step that they provide is live streaming to social media platforms. When we first got Blue Jeans, members of the steering committee were doing regular live streams where they would have have somebody go on, every Thursday or something, and they would talk about what we've been doing in the caucus that week, what was coming up the next week. A few times people said, if we get this many donations before I'm done with the call, I'll sing a karaoke song. But we did a really good job when we first got Blue Jeans of utilizing the tool to do live streams and interact with our members through social media. They also allow these education calls, which have allowed us to do a lot of kind of interview presentation type things, having people like a Jamu or Margaret Flowers on. This is now our 30th call, so we've been utilizing Blue Jeans pretty heavily for that. What we haven't been doing for these calls, and it's kind of because of the structure of them, is live streaming them. But that's something that we probably could do. And then, as I said with the Green Party of Chicago, having access to a service like Blue Jeans or Zoom, or even using a free Google Hangouts, will allow us to have, collaborative remote meetings, allowing people either to have meetings when none of them are in the same place, or allow people who can't make it to that physical meeting of your county or local or state party, for them to actually observe and hopefully participate. So 4 of these tools that I've kind of showcased. The first one is Blue Jeans, and I put that one first because that's what the caucus uses. It does have a fee. I believe we pay about $13 a month, and it goes higher. I believe the reason we chose Blue Jeans, much like why we chose Basecamp, is because when you pay that fee, it's not per user. Other services, if you want to have 10 people scheduling meetings, you pay per user. And I believe Blue Jeans was just a flat, as many users as you want, or a reasonable amount of users. You can connect to it via desktop, mobile, or browser app. You can stream video straight to social media. You can screen share. There's a chat feature. There's integration of your events with social media. It's a good video conferencing tool. The cons for me have been the lack of controllability and the lack of a control room. I can't lock someone on screen, for instance. I'm only getting one video feed, so as the person who's often trying to turn these things into video, it's not so great from that end. Next up, I have Zoom. There is a free version, but it's most likely going to cost most green organizations about $15 a month, because the free version, I believe, limits you to a 40-minute group call. So if you're going to go more than 40 minutes with a group call, you're going to have to pay. It's the same way. It can connect via browser or desktop or mobile. It can stream to social media. It can screen share. It can do chat breakout rooms and integrated events. I believe this is what you use, Michael, correct? I'm pretty
That's correct.
sure.
Yeah, we use Zoom.
And do you use
I use Zoom.
Do you use an outside program to do your editing and your graphics and all that, I assume?
Yeah. Like the streams that I do on Jill's Facebook page or if I'm streaming an interview, I use a software called Open Broadcast Software, OBS. And that's what I capture the video from the Zoom video conference, and then I, can crop and overlay and compose it almost as if you were, working with images in a image editor or a photo editor. Over.
Awesome. Yeah. And I believe you can do the same thing with BlueJeans. But yeah, I've known a number of people who use Zoom for that. So those are two very similar services. That's one of the things with kind of this data dump of services that I'm using is some of them I intentionally included overlapping services that are kind of a what do you prefer type thing. And then there's other groups where they're kind of mutually exclusive. Use one, you don't need. Next up in video and streaming, I have Google Hangouts. When I did a podcast, Google Hangouts was our go-to because it was free, and this was in 2015 and 2016. And more than anything, one of the reasons we had people, when we did interviews, use Google Hangouts is because the audio quality over Wi-Fi was, even a mediocre computer mic is often better than what you get out of a phone over a phone signal. So I'm including Google Hangouts here because almost everybody's got the Gmail account. You can connect through the desktop, and they've got apps. You can do direct streaming to YouTube, which is what we did when we were interviewing presidential candidates. There's a chat system, and you can attach events through Google Calendar if your group's using that. The one thing especially as a free service that I'll give credit to Google Hangouts for, and you use Google Hangouts on air to do the YouTube streaming, but is that it has a pretty solid control room for, especially for a free tool that allows you to lock video on. So like when we did multi-person video, one of those people had a really loud mic, and we were able, when the other person was talking, to just lock them on. I can't do that here in BlueJeans, at least with vanilla, without using some kind of third-party app. And then the fourth one I included on this list is, again, kind of like Google, is Skype, because people who have Office 360 have access to Skype generally. One thing about BlueJeans that I forgot to mention is that you can call in via a phone number. You don't have to use the video portion. You can call in the same way. Skype has that as well, but it costs money. It's got built-in voice and text translation tools. I've never used that, and it also has the screen sharing and the attached chat system. So those four, BlueJeans, Zoom, Hangouts, and Skype, are options. I want to say that the Chicago Green Party used Skype because someone had Office 360 and could make it happen. So that was another kind of ubiquitous one that people just kind of have and they don't know. Are there any questions kind of about the video and streaming services? One thing I'll add too before I move on. Another thing that I think we need to figure out as a party is how to, as the actual state or national or local party, we don't tend to have money. That doesn't tend to be the resource that we have a lot of. So I think we need to be looking hard as institution. Well, how can we provide tangible resources to our locals and our organizers on the ground and to our campaigns? And it's through things like this. If your state party has a BlueJeans account, or like the caucus has a BlueJeans account, we've let Texas have a number. Like anytime Corey sends me a message on Facebook and asks if Texas can use the BlueJeans account, I get him a call-in number on that date and time as soon as I can. So this is a service that if you have someone with the capacity to kind of administrate it from within the party, a simple email can allow, this to kind of spread out and be available throughout, the green infrastructure and the green ecosystem. It can also be something that if your local green party is working with a number of other groups and someone says, oh, we need, we want to have a Skype conversation with this author or something, or this filmmaker after a screening, how do we do that? That's something that the Green Party can tangibly, if you have this, come in and say, okay, we can offer, we have somebody who does this, they know what to do. We'll take care of that end, and it's a tangible resource we can offer, groups and organizations in our community. So I think a lot of these, when thinking about, as a caucus or a state party or a local, we shouldn't just limit it to how could we use this right now, but how could it be a resource that we could offer throughout and down and get that use. So next up, I've got chat, email, and text.
Chris, real quick.
Yep.
Yeah, just a service that was brought to my attention recently. It's called Jitsi, J-I-T as in Tom, S as in Sam, I. And jitsi.org is the site. And it's an open source software suite, but they're also providing their own hosted instance of it that you can just use out of the box. And at first I was kind of skeptical, but I've done some tests and it seems pretty legit. So it's worth looking at. They do give you a call-in number and a call-in code, but then it also has it's geared towards visual conferencing and desktop presentations and things like that. And it seems the main hook is that you set a custom URL for your meeting, and that's what you share around. And it seems like which you just create on the fly. Seems like if you use the same URL, say GPNY conference call, if you use that same URL, it seems like the phone number and the phone dial-in code will persist between meetings. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's in testing. I mean, I consider it to be in testing right now, but it's I think worth looking at.
Yeah, I'll definitely give it a look. Yeah, and that's so with the EDU calls, I started setting them up on my account, and I mean, if someone else wants to do it, I'm gonna need to give them access. I'm gonna need to turn my account into an EDU call related account and detach it from myself, because BlueJeans allows that consistency, that as long as I'm making it and I say use my number, this call has been the same number in the same time for over a year. So that is for recurring things an important thing. And if after any of these sections, if anybody has any questions or has any suggestions on look at this too, don't hesitate to chime in. Anything else on the video side? So next is kind of a weird grouping. I call it chat, email, text. I don't necessarily know that any of these will become an alternative to our email list. I think the alternative to our email list lies in project management software, not really chat software. But these do offer some important things. They offer some things that could be used, kind of differently. And that just because they're not a replacement to email doesn't mean they're not a good supplement. A big thing that I hear a lot of Greens talk about is kind of security of our information and our data. We tend to be a paranoid group. But when you look at how our party works, we are using unencrypted servers, and passwords for the National Committee are literally just a text thing on a server. all of these alternatives offer encrypted communication. So that's a big thing. The first one is one that, is pretty popular. Most people know about. What I'm not seeing is a lot of effective use of it, at least in the Green Party, and that's Slack. There's a free version, but if you want to, get unlimited searchable messages and things like that, you might be paying about $7 a month. But it's a group messaging app. It's got Android, iOS, and desktop versions. It can be set up to work via email, so someone who still wants to work via email can still reply and be involved in the chat, in the Slack conversations. It gives you channels, so you can kind of segment and silo the workload. And a big thing with Slack too is that it can integrate with a lot of other different services out there. And so that's a big plus for Slack if we're talking about kind of total reorganization of how we do things. If Slack's a piece of it, it integrates well with a lot of them. Next up, I have Signal. Signal is a totally different thing. Signal is just kind of a secure communication app. Think of it as a replacement for your texting app. It's got Android, iOS, and it does have desktop versions as well. The big thing about Signal, and WhatsApp is a similar one. I just personally use Signal. Is it's end-to-end encrypted. So Signal likes to talk. It's made by Whisper Systems, and they like to talk about how someone can subpoena them for what you've said in your communications. It doesn't matter if they subpoena them because they have no idea and they have no way of knowing. So it's encrypted in the app on your phone, and it's not unencrypted till it gets to the other person's device. And it can do text and voice video communication. I know the Green Party staff uses Signal. I've gotten passwords and things like that from David June, and that's another great thing about Signal is while you may not want to send a password to how to access the Green Party of New York's YouTube page via email, there's not so much concern to do that via Signal. And then the third one is more like Slack. It's a Discord. It is free. I've known a number of different organizations that have used it. You can manage multiple projects in teams. There's mobile versions, browser versions. You can do email still. It can do voice and text, voice calling and text, like chatting through it. And it's kind of, Discord is one that when I did the Illinois Green Party one, I had it in with Basecamp and the other project management tools, and it kind of teeters on the line between just being a straight kind of communications tool and then having the management stuff, but it really does kind of fall short in terms of what it does compared to a lot of the project management. I know the Green Party US media team supposedly uses Slack, but I never saw any activity really. I know the Illinois Green Party has Slack channels, but there's not any activity. So it's one that the party knows about, but we're not really utilizing it in any effective way. Does anyone have anything to add or any questions on kind of these communications?
With regard to Chanel Sack.
Yep.
With regard to Discord, I've seen Discord used like very efficiently in a group project setting. It is created as a means for gamer communications, so it does have voice and video and also the ability to randomly drop files from here to there. And I've seen, because I have friends that are trying to develop a game, and it's like I've seen Discord break itself down into like 14 different segments as they're building the different parts of this game, from the story to the graphics or whatever. If you know how to use Discord like you would for something businessy, it's a very effective tool. But if you don't, it's like, it feels like you're in another chat app. But it's kind of one of those things where, like most other things, if you want to use it for business purposes, you can, but it's about the focus of the person that's using it more often. And if you see Discord for how goofy it looks, you might not necessarily have the stones or desire to use it like caucusy, businessy type thing. But I was actually quite surprised by what the team was able to Discord. Like I stepped away from it for a couple of months because of elections, and I came back like, ooh. But I guess it depends on the team. Over.
Yeah, absolutely. I can say Redneck Revolt used it nationally. They didn't have a listserv for their national delegates. They used Discord, and and it is like Slack with its teams and threads. Discord goes a little beyond Slack's abilities, I think, in that kind of organizational sense. But Discord, especially for a a smaller group of people who were committed to using it, it is a very powerful coordination. And like I said, it does kind of straddle that line between just being an efficient replacement for email lists to actually being a full, project management. It's kind of on that line there. And yeah, it's the big thing with, any of these tools. I think I mentioned it earlier, that if no one comes, it doesn't matter how good the tool is. And I think that's a big thing about these kind of changes, is that we have to get buy-in, which is one of the reasons too why I've made the offer, and I'll make it online too, but to multiple different states who've talked to me about things, that I'd be happy to come and do something specifically targeted at what a state or an organization wants, if for no other reason than to get the buy-in from the membership. When this was on the schedule for the Illinois Green Party meeting, most of the members were not excited about a systems workshop. That wasn't what they wanted to sit through. And we just happened to be meeting in a library. We didn't have a second room, so it was all that was going on at that time. And those same people who told me they weren't excited about it came away with some actual buy-in. Now, would they actually use the tools effectively if we implemented them is a whole other story. But, I feel like there's a lot better chance that they will versus just kind of a small core group of people just making the decision to move. So a big part of these kind of sweeping changes that I think we need to make is to get buy-in from the people who are going to actually use it, so that they actually do, in the terms of Basecamp, install it on their phone and are checking it. Getting them on Basecamp is easy. That's just putting in an email address. But getting them to actually install the app and leave the notifications on and interact through it rather than through Facebook Messenger or something. That's the challenge. So anything else before I move on? Nope. So the next subject area is project management. I'm going to talk about three of them. I'm going to talk about Basecamp, I'm going to talk about Lumio, and I'm going to talk about Freedcamp, FREEDCAMP, Freedcamp. So these are all platforms for project and team management. Assign tasks, you can do deadlines, you can have chats, message boards, calendars, collaborative documents, to-do lists, all kinds of stuff. When the Youth Caucus moved to Basecamp, one of the main reasons we talked about, that was talked about when we did it, was getting into a single distraction-free location for organizing it. Getting people to commit and engage in that closed space has been more difficult. But at the time that we got Basecamp, I can say that almost all effective organizing through the Youth Caucus was happening via multiple disconnected Facebook chats. And the absolute horrible organizing culture that kind of bred led to moving to base camp and having that kind of single place that wasn't connected to all these other distractions. Um, these kind of services and tools also allow clearly assignable tasks and deadlines. I can it's the kind of the like the bane of activism work is sitting in, whether it's a meeting in a built, locally in real life or on a call or via email. Email's the worst because then everyone could just literally be silent. With that moment when you say, okay, we've got a great idea, who's going to do it? These tools all allow you to actually have that assigned and have reminders and have schedules and deadlines and clearer expectations of what people are doing. They allow you to manage multiple teams and projects, and most of them give you multiple ways to interact with each other. So first up is Basecamp. This is what the Youth Caucus uses. I am just over our year plus in Basecamp. I think we made a fatal mistake, and that was we were so excited about Basecamp, we added hundreds of people, but we didn't know how to effectively use Basecamp. The effective use of Basecamp probably came about 6 months later, and we'd lost most of those 100 people. They are no longer engaged via Basecamp, so we've got to figure out how to get them back on. I also, despite the fact I'm going to talk about a couple other options, I really hope that as a caucus we stick with Basecamp at least for a few years. Creating a new organizing culture isn't going to be something that happens, and if we keep switching between kind of mediums year after year after year based on the whims of whoever's making that decision, we're probably going to find a home. I hope that we can commit to it. Basecamp is $99 a month or $1,000 a year in a lump sum. So that, for the Green Party and for green entities, is the main obstacle. $1,000 a month is probably not something that is within the spending or $1,000 a year in a lump sum, probably not something within the spending capability of the Illinois Green Party. I just don't know that would be really tight for us right now. That said, the benefit of Basecamp, like the benefit of Blue Jeans, is that $1,000 is for full access to everything for as many people as you have, and as many bases as you want. So Basecamp has what they're called bases. They're shown, at least through the apps in the browser, they're shown as little boxes, and then each one can be customized with different tools. And so, for example, in the Youth Caucus, every committee has a base. Each of those bases is called a campfire, which is kind of like a stream chat with no organization. There's a message board with traditional threads where you can have organized conversations. There's to-do lists, there's calendars, there's shared documents, there's all that kind of stuff all in the one. There's check-ins, so you can have automatic check-ins every day. Me and some other people in the caucus, I don't know who all gets it, but I get a notification from Basecamp every day saying, please go share our social media posts and a link to our Facebook. So that's all built in. Every committee's got one. The steering committee's got one. The name change working group's got one. So if you're in a state party, you can, essentially one of the ways, a resource you can offer to both campaigns and local parties or caucuses or whatever entities, working groups and committees, whatever entities you have in your state party. Basecamp offers a platform with limitless users. So you can offer this downstream to basically anyone. Just create a base and you can start adding people. So that's the big plus of Basecamp, what the caucus uses right now. Next is Lumio. Lumio has a free version. but it's likely going to cost a state or a local party $39 a month. Um, like Basecamp, you can manage multiple projects and teams. It's browser based, so you can get to it on desktop or mobile. Each of its groups, which are like the bases in Basecamp, but each of its groups have a calendar and scheduling. One of the big things that Lumio offers that I'm really interested in, and Lumio is the one of these three that I haven't really dove into. Though I probably will in the near future. The big thing that stands out for Lumio is that it can do proposals and polls and dot voting. So it provides a built-in um, voting system where you can run proposals and you can set their thresholds and things like that. You can do polls of membership. So it kind of has built-in democracy tools that would allow for more direct engagement with the membership, whether through directly voting on proposals or just getting polls and things like that. The other big thing about Lumio is that it is open source. So it can be pretty much customized however you want it to be. The third one, FreedCamp. FreedCamp is, as in its name, free, but it has paid add-on features. And unfortunately, some of these paid add-on features would be big ones for us. And they are, unlike Basecamp where you pay a straight fee and you get access to everything for everyone, the add-on features are priced per user, and I'm not sure if that's per user who uses them or per user's total, but it's also available desktop, mobile, and browser, and its workspaces have tasks and subtasks, kind of like the to-do list from Basecamp, discussion sections, calendars, tasks. You can set milestones. It's got built-in sharing of passwords. And then two of the paid features that are, things that if we were using FreedCamp, it might be worth the party looking pretty heavily into some of these. But one is an issue tracker, where it will, you can give it keywords and it will keep you on top of things. That would be great for something like a media committee. And then the other one is it has its own CRM system, so it has its own database management. And so, in theory, if the Green Party US was to move off of listservs and into FreedCamp, and we had all the party organized into their different work groups, we could also leave Nation Builder, and assuming they had a strong standalone CRM that I would hope they would if they're going to make you pay per user for it. It could be a all-in-one move there, because I know at least in Illinois we are priced out of Nation Builder. We're a level below, a plan level below where we actually want and need to be, I believe, and we can't afford the plan above that we need. So that is something to keep in mind. In Illinois, I do have a FreedCamp sample space that we're going to work in, and we're also going to work in the Basecamp samples. Those three, Basecamp, Lumio, and FreedCamp, are the three major project and team management tools that I have on my list. There's a lot of others, and I chose these three specifically because they kind of span a wide range of how they work and how they are billed, costs associated. Any questions on project management or tools that you think should be on the list?
Chanel, quick question. I just want to make sure I understood what you were saying from just now. You're saying we are able to give space to our state making use of Basecamp if we can tie it back to the Youth Caucus somehow? I just want to make sure I'm clear. making sure I understand that properly.
No, though, I mean, the only thing that would stop in terms of users on Basecamp, the only thing that would stop the Youth Caucus to essentially renting Basecamp space to states or giving Basecamp um, use to states would be the admin side on our end.
Okay.
That would be the only barrier. So I know that the caucus, our goal with getting Basecamp is to eventually move the whole party to Basecamp in terms of GPUS. And if that happened, I would 100% advocate that we're spending $1,000 a year, like that we should, if at the national level that's all it is, we should be passing that tool down. So if the national party had Basecamp going and we had a good handle on how to run with it and we had a good handle on how to transition from our email list to this kind of organizing and we'd shown success, I absolutely think that we should be in that situation saying, okay, states, here are bases, or tell us what kind of bases do you need. Like on our Freed Camp for Illinois, I have a executive committee working group, I have a coordinating committee working group, I have a membership working group, I have a dues rollout working group because we're presently rolling out our dues. And so, I would absolutely, if GPUS had all of this, had Basecamp on its own, I think that it should be passing downstream. But I don't know at the current caucus's current capacity if I think we should commit to that, though it would be a great thing that we could do. And that's true, I would say, especially for a state party. If your state party had Basecamp, that's a much smaller administrative task in terms of passing it down to the locals. So if Illinois Green Party got Basecamp, I would expect us to, part of being a recognized local or an endorsed campaign by the Illinois Green Party is that we'll create your base. We'll get you set up on Basecamp. We'll give you an organizing space to work with, and that's one of the resources we have to offer. So yeah, while I wasn't specifically saying we should be doing that right now, we absolutely should and could be doing that.
Okay, well, I just
Michael
wanted to
Neilstack?
clarify that. Thank you.
What was that, Chanel? And then I heard Michael. Michael, go ahead.
Okay. All right. So thanks for pointing us to Freed Camp. That looks like a really interesting resource. And I was wondering if with Basecamp, I assume that you can set permissions so that people can only have access to specific bases.
Yes.
And then okay, great. And then with Freed Camp, what's been your experience with the mobile interface with Freed Camp? I see the Freed Camp app in the Android Play Store is rated kind of low. Do you use the app on mobile, or do you just use the web browser, or do you avoid using it on your mobile device? Over.
I have not used it on the mobile, and I will say that's solely because I am still in the building the skeleton phase for the Illinois Green Party. I don't. One of the things that I learned from the Youth Caucus transitioning to a project management tool was I didn't want to add people in empty space. I wanted to add people in with a space that had, our to-do list already built into it and programmed, and that, people assigned to specific things that they had volunteered for, so that when they came in, it was already telling them. So I have not used their mobile, and it's solely because it's just been easier to build that on the desktop. But I will definitely, I would expect in the next couple of weeks, I'll have that mobile app installed on my phone, and I'll let you know how it runs.
And just one more thing while I'm thinking about it, I don't know if it's on your agenda or not, but I was wondering if you have any suggestions for actual like voting on motions remotely? What you're using at the state level? I know the National Party has the voting software. I know that that software is available for distribution, but I've been it, Perl is a little difficult for me to install. I can do PHP, MySQL, no problem, but figuring out what the hosting needs of that has been a little bit of a challenge here in New York. So if
Yeah,
you have any suggestions, yeah.
I'll
Go ahead.
we'll cover. I have democracy tools as the last subject, and that's kind
Right.
of voting systems.
Got it.
And
Great.
I will make sure to include the US real quick in there because I'm probably still officially the product owner of that voting software because I doubt the new SC has appointed someone else to that position since I turned out. So, but yeah, we'll definitely talk about that. Anything else on the project management front?
One thought, which is that like step zero is getting people to understand project management as a concept.
Yep.
And that it's a needed concept, right? Like before teaching people the interface of like how to check off a task or create a task list or whatever, it's like getting people to think in terms of milestones and task lists and deliverables and things like that. And that's like, I find that's like 80% of the battle.
It's very alien in our party, especially. Yeah, absolutely. So on our last Illinois Green Party Executive Committee call, we have a new exec member, pretty new to the party, pretty quiet. And we just shuffled our exec around, and about 6 months ago, we shuffled how our exec is. And now, as we've been doing that job, I kind of have long realized and been frustrated with it providing no clarity or of expectation or what our goals are, how we structured it. We have 4 co-chairs, and we got rid of our chair and changed it to a membership steward to help with that, the administrative side. But we didn't clarify roles whatsoever for our co-chairs. And so this new member actually, when I brought up I want to have a conversation about that, he was really excited, and he said, because I have no idea what I'm supposed to be doing. And I feel like that's a lot of our interaction with the party, especially when you get to the state and national level. So then just, like you said, getting them to understand it, but a big barrier too is getting our institutions to actually say what they need and want and expect.
Yeah, twinkle that.
So next up I have, it's kind of a hodgepodge that I titled Engagement and Fundraising. The 3 things I'm going to talk about here are Call Hub, Do-Gooder, and Caring Sense. And why I said it as a hodgepodge is because they all do totally different things. This is one of those where at least 2 of the 3 I think our Green Party should be using heavily. Their main uses, kind of broadly, are member or public engagement or fundraising, and broadly these 3 tools provide for better ways to communicate with your membership and your supporters, and to get them to get involved or to donate. They help you better directly contact and then direct people who you contact into action. They improve communication quality and regularity with your supporters, or they can enable you to do that. So first off is Call Hub. The National Party uses it. The caucus uses it. I believe it's what the Coordinated Campaign Committee used to do their calls for candidates ahead of the election. This is one where I hope to do one of these that's campaign focused for the CCC ahead of the 2019 local elections. And I hope to do it early in the cycle because this is one of those tools that if your campaign's not using it, and there's a lot of good uses for state parties too, but if your campaign or state party is not using Call Hub or isn't looking at it or trying to or figuring out how it can be a piece of the puzzle, we're missing a big opportunity. Basically, it is a modern call management system. It's basically running a call center, and you can create call lists. You can assign specific callers. You can create scripts. You can do robocalls through it. It's got auto dialers. It's got patch through. It can integrate with your nation builder and create those lists directly from your membership. It's FEC and FCC compliant. It's got contact history and notes involved, and it's all browser based, so you don't have to install anything. And so this is a really powerful tool for campaigns and parties for calling constituents or for doing get out the vote, doing informational campaigns. We sent text blasts for about a month as a test for the education calls. So for those two calls, and then we did it for all of our Palestine and Justice and Liberation in Palestine series. Every member of the Youth Caucus got a text message telling them about the call. And I want to say it cost us $20-$30 every call. So it was pretty cheap to contact hundreds of people. On pricing, it's free to start, and then there's per call per minute type of pricing. I want to say, if I'm remembering off the top of my head, and I don't have my other document open in front of me, but you get 5,000 calls for free. So that's, if nothing else, use up those 5,000 for the campaign. So that's a big one. It's a tool that really simplifies things. And it gets us off the kind of pathological organizing trait that the Green Party has of lists and important documents and important things existing on various people's physical hard drives on their computer. It allows everything to be integrated through Nation Builder, and rather than someone typing up a list and taking all the, wasting all those all that time, it'll just process the list. Everybody, so you could say let's say the Green Party wants graphic designers, or we want someone who will do a specific kind of work. We can say, make me a call list of every single person that's checked that box on the volunteer form, and then I'll assign that to volunteer calls. So fundraising calls or anything, it's a really powerful tool. Next up is Do-Gooder. The National Party has a Do-Gooder account that we do not use, and it's really kind of a travesty that we don't. The Youth Caucus controls 20% of that Do-Gooder account's campaign, so we get one of the 5 campaigns that's always ours because we helped pay for it, and we don't use it, and we need to. But so what Do-Gooder is when you get those emails, the big thing that it does, when you get those emails or you see those posts on social media that say call or email your senator, Do-Gooder does that. Do-Gooder integrates with Nation Builder, it integrates with social media, and it can allow you to create pretty complex custom petitions and surveys, to have that action step of contacting decision makers or lawmakers. It's got pretty deep analytic tools. You can actually build kind of a campaign page that's kind of a mini website around a petition or an action. You can use it to take successive kind of escalation steps. So, the first outreach, and what I'm advising so after I did this presentation, this is another success story from the Illinois Green Party, but our congressional candidate has something he's been working on for the past 10 years, and it's more than the campaign. It's something that it needs to sustain, and that is bringing um, light commuter rail to Southern Illinois, basically connecting Southern Illinois to St. Louis through the commuter rail line. And it's totally doable, and the tracks are already there. They don't have to build tracks. It's just about routing and coming to agreements with the freight companies. But he, after my presentation to the Illinois Green Party, got a do-gooder account for it. And kind of what we're doing there is the first step is sign this petition calling for light commuter rail. And then later on, there'll be another one that goes out, and it'll say, call. So like, we're going to try to have the Green city councilor in his area have their city put a resolution forward. So when that happens, now you can call your city councilor. Talking things about things like hitting state reps on certain weeks of action, and you can have this kind of escalating organized thing that's still all attached to that same campaign and petition, but you can have multiple actions stacking on there. So it's a really powerful tool to kind of give digital engagement. And the plus, the other side of it, and honestly, probably the most important side of it for the party, is it's a list building tool. When we got do-gooder, I don't remember what the issue was, but there was something, the GPUS Media Committee was trying to write a press release about a current event. And Michael Dennis and I were screaming, forget about a press release. What we need is a quick social media statement and then a petition, and like an action-based petition that comes with or shortly after that. And it wasn't happening, and Michael and I ended up throwing it together in the time that they put together their press release and got it included in the press release, shared it on our social media. 0 press outlets carried that press release, but I want to say in the first 24 hours, we got 400 signatures. And that's 400 potential new contacts into our list. So that's a huge tool for the party. Not only is it, giving, and our campaigns, not only is it giving us the opportunity to provide a way, a form of digital engagement and activism, but it's growing our contacts, it's growing our networks, which is something that we need to be doing pretty heavily. And then, so that's another big one. And then the third one is called Caring Cent. Caring Cent is a micro fundraising application. It integrates with Nation Builder. You have to contact them for pricing because because of the micro fundraising model, it's so variable. So it's something you have to work out on a kind of campaign by campaign thing. But it is kind of cool. And there's 2 main services that they offer. The first is Rally Give. Rally Give is small donations attached to trackable goals. So how the Green Party used it was we set up a campaign where basically every time Trump tweets something that, however the filter, I didn't do the back end, but however the filter is set up, every time Trump says something that is a clear outright violation of green values, you donate 13 cents or 45 cents. However much, I don't know what the number is, but it's something tangible that can happen, and when it does, you get a small donation. And the point is that these are regular things, and there is a cap. That was one of my big concerns, was when we were talking about Trump, I said, well, if you're going to be taking money from me every time Trump tweets something stupid, you're going to take all my money. And the response was, no, we set the monthly cap. So there's a monthly cap on it if things go crazy. One really cool campaign, or even party in terms of petitioning, one really cool aspect of this that I thought of that wasn't really applicable to the state part, to the national party, but would be to a state or a campaign, is signatures. or doors knocked. You could set up, you'll donate this much money for every 100 doors we knock, or for every 100 signatures we knock. And they can do updates. It'll do automatic updates. So if it's doors knocked, the message will go out and say, we just hit 1,000, and you can use that then to try to get more people on to sign per 100 doors. So that's what Rally gives, is these small, tangible goals, and when you surpass them, you get donations. The other tool they offer is called Swipe Give Roundup. A little bit of a mouthful, but basically it's really simple. Purchases are rounded up to support an organization. So we have this set up for the Green Party. You can set it up and say, for every time I swipe my debit card, give the change up to the nearest dollar to the Green Party of the United States. And again, there can be caps and everything like that set. But these are kind of, caring sense is whereas do-gooder is a very active engagement, caring sense is a very passive engagement, very low, small, low commitment. But it's a sustained engagement. You hopefully get someone signing up and they just, leave that thing on until their credit card expires. And then you hope that they fill the form back out to attach it to their new credit card. So there are two very different kinds of engagements, but both of them, I think, can have, pretty good impact. An important thing too to understand about caring sense is that it is not the foundation of a fundraising. It is a small tool that could be used, and I just really like that idea of per door or per signature fundraising. Caring Sense offers. Any questions or comments about Call Hub, Do-Gooder, or Caring Sense, or anything that I'm missing that should be in here?
Michael Stack?
Yep.
So it sounds like the primary reason to use Do-Gooder for petitions instead of just Nation Builder's built-in petition form is that Do-Gooder will connect people automatically to their elected representatives based on the address they plug in, and will automatically send it to the elected official.
Yeah, so like if you choose email, what will happen is it'll pop up an email, the template draft already written, and the spaces where they can insert things, and they can edit and they can add what they want. And then they click send and it goes straight to them. It goes straight out. As opposed to, through Nation Builder, we could totally do that kind of organizing, but it's going to require our members to take that extra step. And probably click a link that will then tell them the actual number or email, and then they can then email it. When you do a phone call, it can pop up a script, and then it can auto call through your phone, through your computer, or I think you can do it on your own through your phone. But it'll make that call for you, and then you're the script in front of you ready to be.
Interesting.
Yeah, but the big thing that Do-Gooder offers is that contact-based thing. It can also integrate through social media, and I haven't seen that done, but I could see that being pretty powerful as well.
Oh, and just a comment, we use the collective texting in Call Hub, basically the text banking, really it was the entirety of our Get Out the Vote operation here in New York State for our gubernatorial race this year. And we went through about 10,000 contacts in about a week, and so the collective texting, our volunteers like it much better than phone banking. It's more efficient than phone banking. We get better responses than phone banking. And it's not nearly as psychologically weighty as phone banking, at least for Get Out the Vote purposes. So we also did text blasting. I did find Call Hub to be a little sketchy on the design side, and on election day, it was straining under the load that I'm sure all the different campaigns using it. So I might check out Relay next time. It seems like just a little bit better user experience, maybe a little bit more expensive on the per text side. But depending on the scale of the campaign and the budget, I'm interested in looking at Relay. But we definitely accomplished a lot with Call Hub, and I'm looking forward to using Call Hub in ongoing party organizing. I mean, like we don't think anything about spending $20 on a stack of flyers, right? Which we may never even hand out. So like, why not spend $10 to like send a text message to 100 people? I mean, our response rate was like 10% or more. In an email blast, it's like you're lucky to get 10 to 20% of your recipients just to open it, much less to actually take an action like respond. Over.
Yep, absolutely. And that, Call Hub is another thing that I think that state parties and the caucus and the national party kind of does already to a small extent, but we should think about this service as a downstream resource we can all. We've talked a little bit in the caucus, but we need, if the caucus could have a small number of people who are kind of trained to do the running of a call operation or a text banking operation ready, that's something that we could tangibly offer to campaigns that we endorse. Same goes for a state party. You get 1 or 2, 3 people who can do that efficiently, and and that's a big part of the barrier too. Is like you said, Call Hub's not perfect. I've had a lot of complaints from people not doing the calling, but I've heard a lot of complaints from people who have to do the back end, that is not so user friendly and all that kind of stuff. So, but Call Hub and Do Gooder primarily in this group, are two that an upper level state party have, or a national caucus like us having access to this could pass it down, could it as something that they use throughout their work. Anything else on those three? So next up, I've got kind of basic administration stuff. In one of them, I don't feel, at least one of them earlier today, I did not feel that I needed to really spend much time on with a youth-oriented forum, and that was Google Drive. And then earlier today, someone that I know that is young and that uses Drive sent me a document to review as a Word doc, and I don't own Word. I don't have it on my. So that it put it back on my list. If your state, and there are Drive alternatives. There's a lot of reasons that people would understandably not want to use Google, in their work, and there are alternatives. I'm not going to get deep into them today, but I'd be happy to include them in my resource packs. But if your state local party is not using the Google Suite for collaborative and cloud work, it's the best, most powerful tool, collaborative tool to start with. Most people have the Gmail account already, so they already have everything, whether they use it or not. But you can do doc sheets, slides, forms. We're going to talk forms in the next group for something specific. For a while, my wife and I use Google Keep to keep grocery lists and things like that. So that's my real quick. When I did the Illinois Green Party with a different audience, I spent a lot more time on Google Drive, and despite someone letting me down today, I don't think I need to spend much time on it. But it is a extremely powerful suite of tools, online and collaborative work. Next up, I have Trello. Trello is kind of like a toned down version of the base, of the project management. Trello just does task management. We tried to use it in the Youth Caucus for a while, and then I think then that was before they had to-do lists, I believe, in Basecamp, and we dropped it for the Basecamp to-do lists. But it allows basically, um, task trackers. You can track in a few different ways. You can assign tasks specifically to other people. You can integrate with other services, and it allows a little bit of it allows some task management in collaborative work. So that's Trello. It's free and there's premium upgrades on it. Um, and then the other one I wanted to talk about is called Freshdesk. And so Freshdesk is one of those things that for your local party, probably not all that useful. For the state party, at least in the case of Illinois, I think Freshdesk is overkill. But Freshdesk would, despite being more than we need, would give us some very useful tools in terms of managing contacts throughout the party. And basically, Freshdesk you can centralize all emails across an organization, and then assign them tickets. It's basically a customer service app. It's an info center app. You can also connect it to your social media, so all social media messages come into Freshdesk. You can assign phone numbers to it, so all phone calls come into Freshdesk. You can assign tickets to either individuals or groups of people. So like when something comes into Freshdesk for the merchandise committee, notifications can be sent to multiple people. They can be sent be sent to the co-chairs of the committee, but also to the treasurer, who needs to know about sales and things like that. When I said it's overkill but provides useful things, one of those useful things is notes. Leave notes on a ticket, and it tells you if it's been responded to and by who. So if you're like Illinois and multiple people have access to an email, that it covers your bases in terms of stopping multiple content. You can also create canned responses for questions and issues, and you can integrate it into your website to operate kind of as your whole website's help center as well. So Freshdesk, I think, would be really useful for the Youth Caucus to get more into it. It's a great tool for the National Party. National Party that has so many emails with gp.org after them, floating around there, and that has for years used different emails. It's amazing to get it all into one place. The problem that we talked about before is if no one checks it, and it still doesn't help our communication. So for example, I talked earlier about empty, uncontacted volunteers. I mean, there are still thousands of uncontacted volunteers. And when we got Freshdesk, it was mainly Mike Dennis, Starlene Rankin, and myself who were using it. The rest of the steering committee never really dove in and started trying to take on some of the administrative workload after Cynthia left. And so, the three of us could go in, and when we got a volunteer request, I had a canned response made that was basically, thank you for contacting us, and I would add some stuff, and then I would forward it. If someone from New York volunteered with GPUS, and they said they do this, and this, I'd thank them. I'd tell them we would get in contact, have someone get in contact with them when we needed their specific services, and that they should also be talking to their state party who's CC'd on this email. So it really did streamline how we could do communication. The problem is if no one goes into Freshdesk, it doesn't matter how efficient it makes things. No one's doing the work. So it's, this is another tool that the party has and that the party technically uses, but we're not getting what we should out of it because we don't have the buy-in. yeah, those are another three that are kind of all over the place, but any questions or comments, those three.
Yeah, were you using Freshdesk at the free level or one of the paid tiers?
I believe we were still at the free level for GP West.
Okay.
But that if it was one of those things like we're going to try it on the free level, and if it works, then we'll probably be upgrading. But at this point, I don't think anyone at National.
But at the free level, you felt like it was a pretty useful email
Oh yeah,
help. Yeah.
yeah, and it also has pretty good analytics. They did a really good job of showing who was actually using it, how much time they were using it, how many, because it's a customer service, they talk in tickets. So how many tickets were resolved and completed. And it was, yeah, even at the free level, it was a really powerful tool for kind of managing that kind of that kind of larger organization communication. For your local, I don't know, unless you've got a really active local, like the Green Party of Chicago could maybe probably use something like this to have more coordination with local wards and things like that with its ward parties. So, but for a state party, yeah, at the free level, I would definitely, I thought it was a very good thing for them.
And did you come up with any workarounds for tying data back into Nation Builder?
No, but we weren't looking too deep into that, I don't believe. Mike Dennis would definitely know more about it. I bet that it is possible. For some reason, and I don't know why, it drives me crazy that we're this way, but for some reason, as a party at the national level, we are scared of integrations with Nation Builder. As the merchandise committee chair, I very much want to, for $25 a month, there is a service that will supposedly integrate our Shopify backend with our Nation Builder. What that would mean would be that all of our sales through our store would be processed into Nation Builder, and we wouldn't have to manually enter those sales anymore. To me personally, it sounds like something that we should spend $50 to $150 and at least try. But there is resistance, surprisingly, from the person who does the manual input about these things have never worked before. But to me, we have much more important things to do than manual input if it could be automated. So I would think that Nation Builder and a tool like Freshdesk have at least somebody's put out a third party if they're not working together on direct integration. But that would be ideal, and it would, a lot of times the one thing I've learned about Nation Builder is that you end up paying a monthly fee for the integration. So that would be something else to balance. Anything else on these ones? Nope. So yeah, go ahead. Nope. So to finish up, I wanted to talk about democracy tools. This part of the research partially came from my long time thinking about the caucus and my desire to see a more direct democracy take place within the caucus. It's not that I want to cut out our leadership. I think they've done, in as much as we've had multiple kind of collapses, I think the leadership, when they've been strong, have done a really good job kind of envisioning what the caucus needs. Things like base camp, things like reorganizing away from a regional model and towards a committee-based model. I think that our leadership has done a pretty good job at trying to guide the party. They've just been overworked to the point of burnout. So it's not that I want to cut out the leadership, but that I want to offer regular substantive engagement. So part of this is one area that I'm thinking about is that I'd like to see, even though the steering committee can approve endorsements, I would like to think that if we had an effective, smoothly running steering committee, we could we could have candidate endorsements, things like that happen through membership votes. And so then how to actually do this. And the same thing kind of goes for within my state and local, within my state party. I'm only at, a lot of times in my experience, only having lived places with small locals, not in big cities, consensus works for us. So we don't tend to need to get too deep into complex voting systems. But I want to talk about 4 different options. They each kind of offer various things. And the first 2 are kind of competitors with each other. These are 2 options that you could go either way depending on how we like them. The third one's kind of completely different, and then the fourth one is completely different too. So the first 2 are OPA vote, OPA vote, and then Election Buddy is the second one. Both of them are online elections. Election Buddy has a lot more range in how you can collect votes. So with like OPA vote, you vote online you vote online and that's how you vote. Election Buddy allows manual entry of votes. It allows accepting mail-in ballots. It allows a lot more variety in how the actual vote is conducted. Both tabulate automatically. Both offer a wide range of voting methods. STV, IRV, approval voting, board of counts, plurality, first past the post, board cards, all kinds of different voting options, both of them. Both are secure and anonymous and private in their election. And the Election Buddy does not have to be private. You have the option to be able to see whose vote went where. The downside to these 2 is pricing. If we wanted to use one of these services to have a leadership election in my state party, it might cost us $100 to do the whole executive committee and all those elections, which isn't too unreasonable, especially given that it could allow online voting and it could auto-calculate the ranked choice voting how we want it to through our settings, rather than having to be manually calculated, which is what's happening. So that's not too bad. But when if talking about direct democracy in the Youth Caucus, neither OPA vote or Election Buddy really offer us what we need. We would be priced out very, very quickly if we were having regular endorsement votes. Let's say you get like 200 people-ish for about 10 to 20 bucks. Which is good. If you're just having a simple vote, totally affordable. Where we would lose out is that if you want to have regular, constant, complex votes, quickly price yourself. The Youth Caucus and most green groups would price ourselves out. But those are 2 really cool. I used Election Buddy when we had the Young Green steering committee elections recently. We had no nominated candidates for national committee delegate. So that meant that we had 8 different write-ins and none of the above won. So Brendan Phillips had actually mathed out and said, I think with 8 write-in candidates and all this, I think our results are NOTA won and then this and then this. And so then I actually went to Election Buddy, manually entered it all in a free test election because it was small enough, and confirmed his end result, but got there through a different math and it displayed every single round, who got what vote, how the votes were redistributed. You got graphs and everything on that. So it was really cool for that complex vote to be able to see how it happened. And I was just able to do that. But I did that just to test it, and I had told myself if it cost me $10 to do it, it cost me $10 just to test the system. So those are the first two options. The third option is called Voting Solutions. It's a Java-based elections platform that does tabulations of election results. Its main program, they have a few different options of it, offerings from this company, Voting Solutions, but the main program that they offer is Choice Plus Pro, and it does STV or IRV, choice voting or instant runoff voting options. And where it's different, it is completely free and it is open source, but there is no support. So this is one of those things, if you have someone who is able to work in the Java environment, you could create a very powerful voting tool with it. And then it would be, then you have to figure out as well how to then get that, ballot to people and that whole mechanism. And so Voting Solutions is, different from the other two. It is way less user-friendly. Customization, running it's going to require someone with some level of knowledge. And then making it what you want is going to take someone with even more knowledge. But if you have those resources, it's out there, it's free. I know it's often suggested as a method to test vote or to check votes. So when I want to say I've seen it used in the Illinois Green Party at larger meetings when we had contested chair races, that they would actually do the math, but also run the math. And I believe it was being ran through software. So those are the three outside the party options. The fourth one is the one that Michael and I mentioned earlier, and that's the GPUS voting software. The Green Party has it's old, it's clunky, it is prone to user error, which when we were working on it, I was constantly preaching that consistent user error is systemic. We need to fix it. It's not, we can't just keep saying, well, you're too dumb to vote, which was kind of how it was treated. But it is a powerful voting system. It has, every single voting member has a login, so you're going to need an admin, but that's going to be the case with all of these. There's going to be administration. So one downside of, with OpaVote or Election Buddy, I can send you a link, you can click it, fill out the information, and click submit. You don't have to create a user, you don't have to create an account, you don't have to have a username, password, and all these things. But for something like a state party or a caucus where we have membership lists and these things already exist, if we had the administrative resources to handle it, the GPUS software is very powerful. The National Party was working with Hugh Esco from Georgia to update it. His goal was to get it into a Java environment. Part of the problem was we had to deal with some of the issues quickly because of upcoming elections and things like that. So, the most common user error with the GPUS voting system is that for ranked choice votes, for that kind of election, you have to vote, you have to click twice. You have to vote, and then you have to confirm your vote. And people often miss that second step, and then they don't vote, and then they're mad, and they say, well, I did vote, but we actually have looked on the back end and said, well, we're watching you in the Apache environment, and you did vote, but you didn't click. You closed the window, and you didn't complete the second step. So the first thing we did when we started working was now anyone who's entered the voting system but not completed their vote would get an email notifying them they had not voted yet at a predetermined time. And an email was set up that when you did vote, you got email confirmation your vote has been. And so we could tell people if you didn't get email confirmation, the vote didn't go through. Um, but the problem with that was we spent a lot of our time getting kind of workarounds in place for that, knowing that we were going to have to rebuild the whole foundation of the voting system. And we just ran out of money before that major overhaul could take place. And I know as I was leaving the steering committee, the Green Party of New York was diligently trying to use the system. And I gave my permission, but that was about all I could do as property manager, controller, whatever my title was. So, this is another one. If the Green Party owns it, and right now, unfortunately, attached to our very specific bylaws, but I don't think if it got into a more modern environment, I don't think it would be hard to allow more adaptability to. So this is another one that if the National Party or when New York asked, my only terms when I was asked about it was that any changes that New York pays for, we would like access to that code as well in case it benefits us. So if it's not the National Party investing in this, if we decide that we would like to own and control our own voting software, which there are strong merits and arguments in favor of, if the National Party is not going to do it on its own, I hope that we can kind of coordinate together as states and work with the National Party to create something that's usable for all of us that we can distribute downstream. So those four, OPA Vote and Election Buddy are kind of an either or. The Voting Solutions is an open source Java-based platform that is going to take a lot of customization, but it could be really powerful. And then there's the GPUS code, which is based on the Deidre code. And one of the big problems, in my opinion, about getting that work done on the GPUS system, and that we need to figure out going forward with the GPUS system, is right now, after the person who wrote the code for us, after the person who made the original software, only one person has ever touched it and knows how. And that's Hugh Esco. And nothing against Hugh, but only one person being able to edit. And that includes, we have to, when you have a steering committee election, they end at a normal time that can't be changed. So Hugh every year has to go and turn off the election at 5 p.m. in the time zone of the A&M every year to actually end that election. So it's dangerous for us to have only one person with the knowledge and the skills. So, I'm glad to hear that Michael has it, and I hope that we can get it in the hands of a few other people, and that maybe we can coordinate and turn it into something useful.
Michael Stack.
Yep.
We've got a copy of the code base, but it's hard to know, do we need a virtual private server to run it? Can we just run it on our $10 a month shared hosting DreamHost account? It's dealing with Perl. So it's like, okay, well, does DreamHost have the Perl modules that we need, or all this stuff? And we have a couple, people within the orbit of our state committee who, at least they claim to have the technical knowledge to answer some of those questions, but they just haven't gotten around to doing that. So, yeah, go ahead.
I can say that we actually just lost our hosting for our work, for our development space. But we had, through the National Party, we hosted through Pair, who does all the other hosting for the party and the email that. So who to host it for us was strictly a question of ease. It was who we were already working with, and we just called them and said, "Hey, we need to add this." Um, and what we, I believe, had was cloud space on a server somewhere, but that cloud space was isolated so that it wouldn't. We had the cloud, so we had the cloud server running the actual operating voting system that's used. Then we had a server for testing where it wasn't actually interacting with any of the real stuff. It wasn't interacting with our real membership lists. We could add those copies of those in that. And then we had another development one built. And when Hugh did the work, I believe Hugh did it on his localized, he did his coding locally on his computer. Then he moved it to that third development one, got it up and running. Then he'd move it to R&D, or that was our QA server, not R&D. Then he'd move it to our quality control server where he could test things. And then if we decided to swap the new version, it would go on to the actual active server. So we had 3 cloud servers, and they were all isolated from each other. But Hugh and David Doonan would be the 2 people that they did all that work. They were over my pay grade when they were doing all that.
Yeah.
Like I was the most knowledgeable member of the steering committee to oversee the work, but at best 75% of the time I was keeping my so there was a lot. There was that was one area, the specifics of the hosting that was over my head, and I here on the specifics.
It sounds like they were using
and I just kind of took I'm going to listen to my developer. Like you and David do what you need to do. So they would be the 2 that could hopefully help you.
So voting solutions, the Choice Plus, were you envisioning that as an online voting system, as long as someone can figure out how to host the Java, or mainly just for like offline processing of ballots?
So the goal when I had the person who suggested it to me was working on it. They wanted it. That was looking at it. They wanted it as an online. The ballot is hosted on Java. It gets they actually they would have a ballot in an but I can say presently how the Youth Caucus runs its elections are email your ballot to secretary@ygus.org. So even though you're actually emailing a digital ballot, it was manually entered and tabulated somewhere. So you could always use it you could always kind of use voting solutions in that half measure. That's the one area I forgot to talk about, a 5th one for democracy tools, and that's just simple Google Forms. For simple votes, for things that don't require anonymity or anything like that, for polling your membership and for formal petition gathering. Google Forms are plenty powerful and and they can you can set the spreadsheet they feed into to auto tabulate and all that. But if you were doing that, voting solutions in larger elections could still kind of be a half measure that you use to do your math for you, kind of using it in that halfway versus actually hosting ballots that fed into it and all of that, which was beyond me. Anything else on those 3?
Yeah. So one service we've been using in New York is called Helios Voting, HELIOSVOTING.org.
Okay.
And you can run free elections on there. It's not, sorry. We haven't been using it for elections. We've been using it for online voting of motion. So, STV and ranked choice didn't really factor into it.
Yeah.
But it requires anonymous voting. So one of the things I'm trying to move towards is, our state committee votes are not supposed to be anonymous. So for having online votes for business between our state committee meetings, we're looking for a kind of a better suited tool for that. Over.
Yeah, and I think too. As I've looked around, and I made this argument when GP West was working on it, and I actually had interest from Redneck Revolt nationally, and DSA as well. People from their national leadership both approached me about, was our system usable in a way that they could rent it from us, or they could buy it from us. And unfortunately, the answer was that it was too tailored to our specific bylaws at the time to be useful. But there is a big gap, a big void that I can see of simple free or accessibly feed democracy voting tools. So this is something that, again, if the party can develop, we talked one time about, on the steering committee, one of the things that got thrown out was how to fund, when we were talking about how to fund our work in updating it, was renting it to state parties. Even at $100 a pop, which is a pretty cheap investment for a state party if they can be given a relatively simple to install tool, that's pretty cheap to ask of them, but that could get us thousands of dollars to do this work. Or just so that was one of the things that we talked about. And honestly, whether it's this kind of stuff or whether it's nation builder, or we need to start trying to, or in the merchandise committee, the print as you go printing through our provider isn't affordable for us right now. But if we could find a way to work with our provider and with state and local parties to get reduced rates across our network, we'd all have to have our own accounts attaching to our own bank accounts, but with them. But if we could find a way to network all of our different entities together, we could probably stop paying so much for a lot of things. I know Mike Dennis pushed for that with Nation Builder. Instead of 50 states having their own Nation Builder account and the National Party have their own Nation Builder, have the states pay into National, and National gets the big badass account that can handle everything. And everyone else, every state gets their own sub-nation. And yeah, there's downsides to it, but right now, too many states are paying for bottom of the barrel plans, and none of us are getting what we need out of the service. So, this voting, if we could figure out the voting system properly, it would be a big thing both within the party and, in other organizations, and something we could actually sell. But, get out to people at an affordable price to help us maintain it.
Scott Stack.
Yep.
Hey, Chris. I've been enjoying listening to all the cool software. I just wanted to mention Lumio.
We talked about Lumio.
Oh, you did?
We had a whole project management section. I want to talk to you about Lumio offline, though.
Oh, okay.
Because it's out of our, I have lots of experience in Basecamp. I'm getting experience in Freed Camp, and it's the third of my list of project management that I haven't really dug too deeply into. So yeah, I wanna talk to you a little bit about that offline. But
Okay, cool.
yep.
Yeah, because that can be just a free democracy. I mean, there's a bunch of different kinds of voting, election kind of things that you could do, and it's totally free.
Yep.
And then I was also wondering if you mentioned Slack.
Yes.
You did. All right, I missed that, but I will catch up on it with the upload.
Yeah, and I have I will I'll post on this event and in Basecamp and stuff. I have a link to a Google Drive folder that has some sheets on all these different things and different resources on it that I'm kind of constantly growing and building. But yeah, like I said at the beginning of the call, this is about half of the different tools I talk about on across all those sheets. So I'll get those added up. And one of the great things about doing these this specific call and this is now the second time I've done a workshop based around this idea, is that every time I'm coming away with new things to add. I'm really excited that Michael was able to come on, because Michael's got a lot of good insight. Same thing, once Andy Ellis is done resting, I'm going to be re-bothering Andy, because I know Andy uses a lot of good digital tools and organizing. So this is hopefully something that I'm going to keep growing, and that we can, even if it's not a workshop, at least have some kind of resource kit available, so basic information out there. Anything else? Cool.
Well, thanks for putting this together, Chris. I got to leap off, but really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you everybody for coming, and I'll be in touch with pretty much everybody off list. So have a good night.
Thanks.